Hello, everyone. Welcome to Unpontificated. My name is Voyo, and I'm going to do something a little bit different today. I am going to engage with ChatGPT. I'm going to ask ChatGPT to grade Mark Carney as Canada's Prime Minister. I want ChatGPT to give him a grade from A for outstanding to F for fail. And we're going to find out what ChatGPT will do. We'll grade him, we'll assess our Prime Minister. So let's get started. So here we are on ChatGPT, and I'm going to ask it. Mark Carney has been Canada's Prime Minister now for 4 months. He was elected as Prime Minister on April 28th, 2025, and and I would like you to give him a grade to assess how he has done for Canada and for Canadians. What do you need from me to make that assessment? All right, that seems pretty clear. So this is what ChatGPT wants. What are my key priorities? What areas do I most care about? Economy, healthcare, housing, foreign policy, climate, reconciliation. Wow. National unity, affordability, immigration, security. Do you want me to evaluate him against his campaign promises or against general expectations of a PM? Should I rely mainly on public reporting and polling data, or also on your own perspective as a Canadian voter? Wow. Grading scale. Would you like a letter grade A to F, numerical score 1 to 10, or more narrative style assessment on strengths and weaknesses? Once I know these things, I can do a thorough subject kind of first 4 months and give you a grade. Do you want me to lean more on objective measures or on a values-based judgment? How well he is living up to what Canadians need right now. So I'm going to tell him that I want objective measures. So I'm not going to give him any subjective assessment. I am a conservative, so I could be biased. I'll be point blank. Even though I try not to be, hey, there's always a chance. So I want objective measures. I put him assessed on objective measure. And I want a letter grade score. Okay, searching the web. Clarify the first. So to make a fair objective valuation, could you clarify which of the following key performance areas you'd like me to prioritize? Trade and economy. His handling of US tariffs and trade tensions, especially with the US. Measures like the rollback of retaliatory tariffs and passage of internal economic reforms, One Canadian Economy Act. And number two, approval and public support, polling and approval ratings. How quickly has public confidence risen or declined? Foreign affairs and diplomacy. Key diplomatic moves like restoring relations with India or hosting the G7. Canada's position on global issues such as recognition of Palestine, NATO commitments, etc. Legislation and domestic progress on major bills. Other policy moves impacting internal trade, housing, economy. Other objective measures, indicators like inflation, trade flows, currency strength. These are examples of available. Objective ChatGPT seems to be doing a pretty good job. Carney has dropped many retaliatory tariffs starting September 1, aligning with CUSMA, USMCA, through tariffs on aluminum, steel, and others, though tariffs on steel, aluminum, and autos remain. This easing of trade tensions has been described as pragmatic by some experts, though critics see it as too conciliatory. I'm interested in knowing what you think, ChatGPT. And then other diplomatic moves, strong engagement on the global stage, restoration on high commissioners with India, hosting the G7 summit, an invitation to PM Modi, helping thaw strained relations. The landmark One Canadian Economy Act passed in June, aiming to remove interprovincial trade, speed up nation building products, and Carney's approval rating reached an impressive 67% in June, one of the highest in Canadian history, but started from a low 41% in March. That's from Wikipedia. Once you specify which focus areas matter most, I can gather and summarize the most objective data from reliable sources, compare against typical expectations for a PM in the first 4 months, convert that into a letter grade based on success benchmarks in each domain. So let me know which 2 or 3 of these areas you'd like me to emphasize, and I'll put together the data and deliver a reasoned objective letter grade. For example, you might say focus on trade and the economy, approval, or I want diplomacy and letter development. Once you decide, I'll quickly compile filtered evidence and grade his performance. Okay. So what I'm going to tell ChatGPT is that I want him objectively graded on how his policies have impacted Canada and Canadians since the Prime Minister of Canadian, Canadians better joy in Canada better financial better. Wow. So there it is. You have it, guys. Our overall grade coming straight from ChatGPT. Canada's macro picture has stabilized on prices and markets. Housing supply is ticking up. There's been one major piece of pro-productivity legislation, but growth is soft, unemployment is elevated. Unemployment is elevated, and the federal balance is trending wider while US trade frictions persist. Net, modest improvement with meaningful risks. Just from what ChatGPT said there, I don't know how you can say modest improvement. Growth is soft, unemployment is elevated. That's, I don't know, Chat. I don't know, Chat. Canadians doing better economically. Inflation rates. Headline CPI slowed to 1.7 year over year in July. If you remove gas prices, 2.5%. And the Bank of Canada has held at 2.75 since spring, both supportive and purchasing power and debt servicing. This from Stats Canada. It's interesting that ChatGPT actually gives a little bit of a bibliography there, telling us where it's getting its stats. Unemployment 6.9, higher than early 2025, so the labor market is still soft. Yeah. Average weekly earnings rose 3.7%, outpacing real consumer performance indicators. Real pay is edging up, but slack persists. Okay. It's from Stats Canada. GDP fell. Oh my goodness. Can GDP fall even more? So in other words, we've had no growth with a 0.1% advanced estimate for June. So it's flat. It's going to be flat. Q2 was roughly flat, exactly, rather than contracting. An okay outcome given tariff shocks, but not strong. So in other words, growth is negative. Housing supply. Housing starts rose 45% in July, and the 6-month trend improved. Constructive affordability over time. We shall see, because right now housing prices are not coming down, and in fact, I don't know if they're flat. Markets and currency, S&P TSX near record highs, and the Canadian dollar firmed after the tariff rollback announcement. Signals of improving sentiment. Well, yeah, I mean, certainly Trump seemed to like the tariff rollback announcement, and he says he likes Mark Carney, but there's still no sign of a deal. There's really still no sign of a deal. So it says signals of ChatGPT says signals of improving sentiment, but we shall see. Verdict: economy is a B. Lower inflation, steady rates, stronger housing starts, and equity markets outweigh soft GDP and higher unemployment, but only modestly. I think ChatGPT is being kind. B, but even with these, lower inflation, steady rates, housing, stronger housing starts, and equity markets outweigh soft GDP and higher unemployment. Not for Canadians. Canadians, if more Canadians are unemployed, I'm giving verdict C. That's what I would. Is Canada doing better financially and fiscally? Balanced budget. The federal shortfall for April to May widened to 6.5 billion on higher program spending and debt charges. Early signals point to larger deficits than pre-election projections. Yeah, and that is pretty much going to be even more because we are spending more. I do like the fact that we're spending more on the military, but let's not go overboard. Do we have to go to 5%? Debt and borrowing costs. The 10-year Government of Canada yield hover around 3.45%. Manageable, but above last year. Debt projections point to continued increases through the medium term for PBO think tank tracking. Manageable, but above last year. Policy stance, Carney's platform early signals split operating and capital budgets and aim to slow spending growth, but near-term data shows no fiscal tightening yet, this according to Reuters. Yeah, there's no fiscal tightening yet. The problem is we don't even have a budget. So until we have a budget, we don't know what's going on with Mark Carney and this government. Because right now it just seems with no budget, you can just spend. And there's nothing that Parliament can do because we're not even sitting. Verdict C+. Fiscal conditions are stable, but the deficit path has deteriorated early in the fiscal year. Credibility now hinges on the fall update and execution. Exactly. The fall update, a budget, please. We don't just want it. We don't want an update. We need a budget and then execute. And this budget is going to be billions in the deficit for sure. But ChatGPT gives him a C+. I do C-. I think a lot of people, I'd be interested to know what people like Brian Lilly and those would give him with these. Because the deficit, just the deficit itself, for many of us, just be F. All right. So we had, is Canada doing better fiscally? C+. We had, are Canadians doing better economically? B. ChatGPT is kind. ChatGPT is grading on the curve. Is Canada in a better political situation? Well, legislation passed. The One Canadian Company Act. I like that. I think that's a good act. It's passed. And I think it's now just a matter of getting provinces to drop their barriers. Some people have, some provinces have with other provinces, but let's just get it all done, man. Get it done. Intended to cut interprovincial barriers and speed major projects. These are federal interprovincial barriers. The provincial barriers. Did I say that right? Implementation will determine impact, but it's a substantive early win. Yeah, I'll agree with that. In fact, the Conservatives voted with the government on that. So good. U.S. trade frictions. Ottawa rolled back many retaliatory tariffs to align with USMCA. Yeah. Putting us in a weaker, well, not putting us in a weaker, but showing our weakness, showing that Mark Carney is not the negotiator in chief at all. Like we're the ones who just keep giving, rolling back. But anyway, the U.S. steel, aluminum, auto tariffs still bite. This eases price pressure at home. It leaves key sectors exposed. Exactly. And you heard Mark Carney, try to justify this rolling back of tariffs by saying because we have CUSMA, that we're still in the best position as far as trade with the US than any other country, tariff-wise, any other country out there, because we have CUSMA. That may be true, but that's not what you were saying before. Before the election, you were saying that you're the guy who's going to be able to talk, negotiate with Trump. So far, nada. That's an F. F. Diplomacy, relations with India are fine. That's a net positive for trade and diaspora politics. Okay, let's see. Let's get the trade going then. I mean, that's a huge market. Domestic legislative momentum and improved India ties are positive. US trade remains an unresolved hang. I'm surprised that you didn't put China in there, ChatGPT, because the canola guys have huge tariffs put on them by China, because Canada has put tariffs on the EVs coming from China, or if there are any, I mean, but on EVs that are being made in China. So China has itself retaliated with tariffs on canola and other agriculture products. So I'm surprised that that's not in number 3 here. Okay, what moved the grade? By the way, that was a verdict B minus. I think if they put China in it, that might have moved to C minus. So what moved the grade? Consumer Price Index back in the target zone. Okay, Bank of Canada on hold. C5, I guess that's the interest rate. C5, the one Canadian Economic Act enacted. Okay, that's good. Stronger housing trends and firm equity market. Okay, pulled down by unemployment, 6.9%, flat growth, early year deficit deterioration, highest debt service. Yeah, that's brutal. Incomplete resolution on US tariff exposure. Incomplete, hasn't even started. All right. On objective indicators, Canadians are somewhat better off on prices, rates, and market confidence, but not yet on jobs or growth. The fiscal picture is weaker. The political situation is mixed, but improving outside the US file. That balances to a B minus for the first 4 months. If you want, I can keep this report card updated monthly with fresh CPI, just the grade accordingly. No, I don't want that, ChatGPT. But thank you. So, guys, we see here. Let's just repeat this. Overall grade B minus. Okay, B minus. And the reason for that is Canadians doing better economically? Verdict B, because of lower inflation, steady rates, stronger housing starts, and the equity markets outweigh soft GDP and higher unemployment, but only modestly. Is Canada doing better financially and fiscally? We have verdict C plus. Financing conditions are stable, but the deficit path has deteriorated early in the fiscal year. Credibility now hinges on the fall update and execution. Let's see if we get a budget. Is Canada in a better political situation? Verdict B minus. Domestic legislative momentum and improved India ties are positives. US trade remains an unresolved overhang. And I'm surprised that China was not thrown into this consideration. Interesting. So what moved the grade? Why is the grade B minus? Because the consumer price index is back in the target zone and the Bank of Canada has not done anything with the interest rates. C5, the One Canadian Economic Act, was enacted and the potential productivity gains. We'll see. And then the stronger housing starts trend in the firm equity market. What pulled down the grade? The unemployment, 6.9 and flat growth. earlier deficit deterioration, total deterioration, and a higher debt service, incomplete resolution, incomplete. It's kept moving of the US tariff exposure. Bottom line, according to ChatGPT, I'm just going to read this again. So I just wanted to repeat, guys, so we get this for emphasis. According to ChatGPT, on objective indicators, Canadians are somewhat better off on prices, rates, and market confidence, but not yet on jobs or growth. The fiscal picture is weaker. The political situation is mixed, but improving outside the US file. That balances to a B minus for the first 4 months. How did ChatGPT do? I think ChatGPT was kind, was grading on the curve. I think ChatGPT, I think Mark Carney deserves at least a grade lower. Is it B minus? C minus. And I'm surprised there were no Fs in some of those metrics that ChatGPT talked about. For instance, the deficit. Big F there. What do you guys think? I would like to know if you think ChatGPT was on the ball, was on the mark. Was ChatGPT objective? And I'm going to do this again after a year and see what ChatGPT thinks of Mark Carney's performance. Please let me know in the comments your thoughts, and I'll see you guys next time. And please like and subscribe so you can get more of ChatGPT's results and any commentary that I may have. I'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye.